Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lora, Sodini, and I'm the Director of Philanthropy here at SOS-USA. So to kick us off, I'd like to introduce Neil Ghosh, who is the President and CEO of SOS Children's Villages USA. And Neil, before we dive in with Klaus and Gebre and Irene, why don't you kind of give us a quick history about SOS and the villages to set the stage for our conversation today?
Well, first of all, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Klaus, Gebre, and Irene for joining, and thank you, Lora. I learned about SOS, unfortunately for me, not too long ago, really approximately 3 years ago. And obviously, as I took the job, I traveled to villages, met a lot of children, met their families, SOS mothers, and our colleague. And I was blown away by the transforming changes the model is bringing. So it's obvious that every opportunity I get, whether it's a webinar, whether it's walking to somebody, I start talking about SOS and the impact of the model. But I think today, I'll be very quiet. The reason of this is when I have Klaus, when I have Gebre and Irene, I think I'm more of a listener today to really understand the power of this model, not just the power of the model, what I learned, because I only learned it for 3 years, but the power of the model to make sustainable change, which is a big difference. So I'm going to really be very carefully listening in from these 3 individuals who have achieved remarkable success in their lives. And from me, it will be as much learning as the rest of you. So that said, a few words, as Lora suggested, SOS was founded by our founder, Hermann Geimner, in 1949, after the Second World War, with a simple vision. What do you do with the kids? And like any other simple visionary, it was a remarkable idea at a particular time to give home to children and young people. What has happened since then is equally remarkable. And I will try my own words from my perspective what that means. It has grown from a single village to now almost 550 villages or so around the world, which itself is remarkable. But like any other organization, whether it's a private sector, nonprofit, any sector, we also adjusted with time. The initial concept of giving a home to a child who doesn't have anywhere to go has transformed many different ways. First of all, we have a very strong prevention program. So the original idea of care, both short-term and long-term care, we have added a lot of work in family strengthening to work with communities. So there's a whole prevention work we started doing approximately 10 to 15 years ago. Then we realized what's going to happen to the children when they leave the villages. So we started working on the idea of youth empowerment, youth employment. So it's not an end of a village, but their entire life, their adulthood, and their children, and their grandchildren. And then we realized that's not enough, because we are only touching, as proud as we are to say we are the largest organization in the world taking care of the children that know where to take care of. To be very honest with all of you, we are still very tiny. So I think we realized that to really have an impact and scale, we have to do advocacy. So we added that element of work that we work with the government, local government, sometimes state level, sometimes national level, to change policies. Because without policy change, a lot of things does not happen. So we added that element. So we have now prevention, care, youth employment, and advocacy. But also very important to mention to all of you, what I have seen myself in some of my limited time, that we realize that the 3 cross-cutting pillars in the 4 pillars we just talked about, education is a fundamental pillar, absolutely fundamental to what we do. I have met kids just in their 1st grade, and I have met kids in Morocco, they're going to college. It is remarkable for me to watch how important education is. And the other 2 cross-cutting pillars are gender, we take it very seriously, and the 3rd one is emergency relief. So I think when I look at the statistics in the United States, 100% of the high school children graduates from high school and go to college. I wonder, How is it even possible? And I scratch my head because they're not going to separate school. So again, today is an opportunity for me, like all of you, to listen to Klaus, to listen to Gebre, to listen to Irene. What exactly happened in the villages, in the system that allows this kind of a graduation rate? Before I hand it over to panelists, I do want to touch on one more topic that is very close to my heart, particularly what's happening around the world in the pandemic. Right after I started trying my best to reach out to the kids, whether they're in India or in Morocco or in Jamaica, to talk to them. And this pandemic has created havoc in most families, irrespective of political status, economic status, or any or social status. So you can imagine the impact of this in the vulnerable children. And I mentioned this into today's context because as we learn from the panelists, their life, it's not about learning, but also acting. So I'm hoping that we also take away after this conversation, what can we do as an individual, as a group, as a society to give back and act on this. And I give you one data, right now as I came from Calcutta, India. So although I got to know SOS 3 years ago, when I met or I talked to Irene or I talked to Klaus or much younger kids in other countries, I kind of felt I know them. I know them because I met these kids as a child. I know them because I worked with this kind of children when I was a child. And it brought back my own memories of what hardship is all about and how a simple act of kindness can change the life of Klaus of the world or Irenes of the world. So when I look at pandemic situation today, I have my own family members. I don't have to search in some remote part of the world because I have a large family, extended family. I have family members who have no income, no government support, and no idea where the next paycheck will come from. So I don't have to search very hard to find these people. So I think as I hand over this conversation to the panelists and learn from them, let's keep us in mind that what's happening with the pandemic around the world and how we can all participate and support the situation. Thank you, Lora, and I'm going to stand by, but I'm going to listen in really from these three remarkable panelists.
Thanks, Neil. I appreciate your overview, and I agree with you. I'm ready to listen and learn. So let's dive in. Before I turn it over to our panelists to kind of give a background on their story about coming to SOS, I want to first just kind of give a little bio on each of them and what they're up to now. So starting with Irene. Irene is currently a consultant with PCG's Education Division, where she works with school districts across the US to optimize services for underprivileged students. She studied international relations, business, and communications at the University of Mannheim in Germany, and earned her Master's of Arts in International Relations at the University of Oklahoma. Irene is currently on our board of directors here at SOS-USA, and we are so lucky to have her. And she's also involved with a number of other international development organizations. She's also a founding member of the Atlanta chapter, which is a group of individuals who help raise support and awareness for SOS. She lives in Atlanta and is the mother to 3 wonderful children who've all been part of our events and SOS events over the years. So next we have Gebre, who is a graduate of the SOS College in Ghana, where he went on to get a full scholarship to Harvard University, where he graduated with a degree in applied mathematics. Gebre works as an energy trader and lives in Houston, Texas. He's also currently the president of the Luel Girmay Foundation, named in honor of an SOS brother who passed away. So this foundation, which is financed actually by SOS alumni around the world, raises funds for academic equipment, computer facilities, and libraries throughout Africa. The foundation to date has built computer and education centers in Ethiopia, the Gambia, and Ghana. He is our 2020 winner of the SOS Herman Gemeiner Award, so congratulations, Gebre, and is also the proud dad of 2 children. And last but not least, we have Klaus, who graduated from Danube University in Austria with a hotel management degree. Klaus now lives in Reno, Nevada, and has successfully started and sold a few companies and now owns an investment company that includes being a franchisor of a few emerging brands as well as a real estate portfolio. Klaus is on our advisory board here at SOS-USA and has also been involved in a number of organizations over the years, including helping to start the Discovery Museum in Reno, as well as Step 2 and the Sage Ridge School. He's been married to his wife, Kristen, for 26 years and is also the proud dad of 2 adult children, one of whom is living in Chicago and the other one currently attending SMU in Dallas. So Irene, Klaus, Gebre, let's jump in. And I think before we get to the questions from the audience, I think it would be really helpful if you guys could set the stage a little bit and give us a background on maybe, you know, what village you grew up in, how old were you when you came to the village, kind of what are the circumstances that you'd like to share that brought you to the village, and maybe a, you know, favorite memory or tradition of your time at the village. So Irene, if you could kind of start us off with that, that would be great.
Yeah. Be happy to. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining. My name is Irene Bailey. As Lora mentioned, I live in Atlanta, have been in the US for 15 years plus now. Grew up in an SOS village in Germany, and am originally from Senegal, West Africa. Too many childhood memories to mention. It's hard to pick just one. But I think holidays in general at SOS were always a special time. Just the excitement of it. I think just getting ready for holidays, dressing up, cleaning up the home, just all the wonderful traditions that go with holidays. And it's just a kind of a continuing theme throughout my childhood, those holiday memories. Pick any holiday, we celebrated it. So, yes.
Great. Klaus?
I'm Klaus. I live in Reno now, and I got to SOS when I was 5 years old. And in Austria, initially, you go through an evaluation for a couple of weeks to see which families would be a good fit, and ended up in southern Austria, in Moosburg, when I was 6 years old. I went through, you know, by the time I aged out, you go to a Jugendhaus, it's called, which is in a bigger city, which you have more opportunities for work or studies or whatnot. And my SOS mom, actually, she passed away this spring, a little bit COVID related. But what's amazing is that in her time, she raised 32 kids. And just like Irene said, the holidays were times where we get to see some alumni from your own family, some of the brothers, sisters you never met that aged out before I even got there. Probably by far the best memory has always been, and Irene and I agree on it, Caldonazzo, which is our summer camp, 6 weeks every summer. We're somewhere in Italy, meeting kids from all over Europe, in that case, learning different languages, talking with hand and feet, trying to figure out what Spanish is, etc. So, you know, looking back, you know, I sent my own kids there a few years back with, you know, 1,000, 1,500 kids that let loose under some guidance. I'd give to spend another summer. I'd give a lot to spend another summer like that somewhere. So, but yeah, SOS, 18 years old, graduated from high school, university, and I live in the States since 1991. And thinking back fondly of my childhood memories, which you're kid amongst kids and raised by a village, you know, as Hillary Clinton once said so. Well, it takes a village to raise us, and literally did. So thanks, Lora, for the introduction.
Yeah. Wonderful. Gebre?
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm very happy to join this panel today and just share my experience about SOS. I joined SOS when I was 5 months old. I had lost both my parents due to a famine that was going on in Ethiopia. So when I joined SOS, I was literally, you know, a baby. So the way SOS in Ethiopia, especially, so I joined in 1984. So I'm sure a lot of people know, you know, the background story about Ethiopia and the big famine that we had. So a lot of people had, you know, lost their parents. So SOS, you know, being able to go to a place where, you know, you could get, you know, your basic needs, but in addition to that, SOS basically provided me a family. So just being able to grow up in a family, you know, get the motherly love, the care, and then in addition to that, you know, also afford me a really, really good education, a lot of opportunities to to make a better of myself and become a responsible citizen of the society. Some of just a favorite memory. Really, I mean, for me, it's like summertime. So summertime for us, basically, we don't have school, so all we did was play soccer 24/7 almost. You eat breakfast, you go out, you play. You eat lunch, you go out, you play. You eat dinner, sometimes you go play. So it was just that environment. And in the village that I grew up there were about 20 family houses. Each house had 15 kids. So you can imagine we had 300 kids of different ages, but we just the ability to play and just have that experience at the village was wonderful.
Great. I see the common theme of the time. Most times you get to play with all the kids, either at the village or at the camp that you guys got to attend throughout the summer. So just like every kid and like me, that's of course what sticks out. So great, thanks so much guys for the introduction. We have a lot of great questions, and thank you again everybody on the phone for sending them prior. So we're just gonna jump right in. So this question was from Matthew, and he wanted to know where did you guys go to elementary school and high school while living at the village, and what other activities, which Gebre, you just talked about some, did you participate in while living there? So Gebre, can you kick us off with where what your elementary or high school experience was at the village?
Yes, so in most African countries, the SOS Children's Village would have its own school. The schools tend to be, from elementary school all the way to high school, and they tend to be probably like the best schools in that, community or in that city or in that country. So I basically went to an SOS school for elementary school and middle school. And I did relatively well in school, so I got a scholarship. I got an opportunity to go to an SOS school in Ghana. Basically, it's an international school for a lot of African kids that excel in school, where we go and basically do our middle school and high school. And we did the international baccalaureate there. So for me, it was actually a really good opportunity because I got to go to school and learn and get to know a lot of kids from other countries who had kind of a similar SOS experience. So for us, that was probably the most wonderful experience I've had. And until now, that whole group that went to Ghana, we keep in touch. The Grimm Foundation is basically actually run by a lot of the people who went to that school. A lot of the students who went to that school either obviously almost 100% go to college to get their first degree or even advanced degrees. A lot of people who are in the US, a lot of them on full scholarship. So when I finished the IB program at the SOS school in Ghana, I had an opportunity to apply to a number of schools in the US, and that's how I got the scholarship to come to the US to study at Harvard.
Great. Irene or Klaus, did you guys want to comment about, I know yours is a little bit different of a situation in Europe.
Yeah, I went to public school, elementary school, which is 4 years. In Europe, high school is a little different than in the States. High school, we call it gymnasium, is where, I guess, compared would be a gifted, talented program here in the US. Because the village was about 15, 20 miles outside the closest town with a high school, I ended up going to a boarding school. And this is not like here in the States where boarding schools are typically more for the well-to-do. At least that's the opinion of a lot of people. This was more for the not so well-to-do, but that are gifted, and it was a Catholic boarding school. And on weekends I would go home to the SOS and until I graduated, so I was sort of boarding school back and forth. But in Europe, we did not have the on-campus school model per se.
Yeah, it's very similar for me. In Germany at the SOS Village, I went to a pre-K program that was at SOS, and that actually was more of a public setting. So there were kids from outside of SOS who also attended, and it was a Montessori model, I believe. So really well sought after. After that, I went to public schools, just like Klaus. I went to, elementary, middle and high school is one thing, gymnasium in Germany. and then just kind of took advantage of public education, which I think is the norm for SOS in Western Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Yeah, we've seen it. It definitely varies a little bit depending on the country and what the schools are like. And SOS, the schools that we do have, I know, Gebre, like you said, have such a good reputation that they really are sought after for even, people outside of villages as well, and have a good opportunity to educate kids who might not otherwise have the opportunity to go to school that are living in the community. So really some of the most vulnerable kids in the community who get the opportunity to go, which is great. So this next question we have, so kind of continuing on the education theme, is from Sanjay, and we had quite a few people ask similar type questions around, so how does SOS help children as they go on to college or vocational level school, and how did SOS really support you guys after you left the village and either went on to school or work or whatever it may be? So Klaus, do you want to kick us off there?
Yeah, I'd love to, because I'm very much a benefactor of that process. So SOS isn't just, you when you're 15, just kick you out. You're 18, you get kicked out. The SOS organization makes sure that you complete your education. That could be university, that could be a trade, that could be whatever it is. In my case, after high school in Austria, military is mandatory. And I lived outside, so SOS helped me with my living expenses. And then in college, paid for the tuition, paid for the apartment to make sure I had, I can have this experience, get through it, not having to worry about money as much. We got a small stipend. We're not, it wasn't anything great, but however, it was enough for me to get by, and I could rely on their assistance. It wasn't just financially, but there may be tutoring needed. There may be other external things we may need, along the way. Or you're doing an internship in a town somewhere else. We're able to stay in that SOS village or an SOS organization nearby. So I've done that when I worked in Switzerland and had a 2 months break. So I was able to stay in the SOS village outside in Western Austria. So it's a comprehensive approach, and really by the time I sort of, metaphorical, give him the key back to the village, I was good. I was a productive citizen, and still to date, thank a lot of the guys and the women that guided me along the way. So that was my experience with SOS.
Well,
Gebre, anything else to add on it?
Go ahead. Gebre?
Oh, me? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think I had a very similar experience to Klaus. I mean, I would describe SOS as basically a normal family. So like a normal family would not take you to, would not support you until you're 15 and 18 and tell you you're on your own. Whenever there is a need, and SOS steps in. I was fortunate enough when I came to college, I was on a full scholarship. So I did not need financial support, but in terms of just having that big family. So when I came to the US, it's the first time outside Africa. So the first people that I contacted with people who grew up in SOS. So that's basically my extended family. I stayed with them 2 weeks before I started school. Basically taught me, the basic things that I needed to do in the US, just the cultural difference, how to approach people. So for me, it was, I take SOS to be an extended family, a big family. They will step in whenever you need to. A lot of people, they would, as long as you have, let's say, some sort of scholarship, whatever financial need there is, they're usually very considerate. And one thing I like about SOS is it's not like one model, one approach for everybody. Everybody is different. Everybody has a different need. So that more personalized approach to a lot of kids, it's actually a very effective way to help children, as opposed to having, one policy saying that, by the time you're 18, you got to finish school. So for me, I just take it to be like a normal family that helps me whenever I need to. And I've kept my contact and relationship with SOS until now. Whenever I go back to Ethiopia, I make sure I go to the village. I talk to the kids, the younger kids. So it's a normal family basically comes in whenever I need to, and I try to. It's a two-way street.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
I think, go ahead, Irene.
Yeah, no, I think my experience pretty much mirrors a lot of what was shared here. I think the most remarkable thing that I kind of take away from my quote unquote preparation, for school, for higher education is really the level of rigor that and the high expectations that my SOS mom set for us. And so, right now I have, 2 children, one bonus child, who I obviously as a parent had to support throughout their childhood and their school years. And when I compare, the kind of effort it takes to really pour into each individual child, like Gebre was saying, not to take kind of a broad approach and treat every child the same. That's what was given to us at SOS. And the more, the older I get and the more life experience I have, the really remarkable takeaway from the SOS upbringing is that our childhood was very quote unquote normal. I think my other colleagues here on the panel have mentioned that it was a very normal upbringing, which in itself is a remarkable experience, given the background and the way things could have gone for us. I know things could have gone for me. And when I look at the individual, day-to-day treatment at the SOS village, the fact that my SOS mom, who, along with me raised a total of 10 children, was as involved and as hands-on as I really strive to be with my own children. I struggle with the 2 or 3 that I have to take care of, on my own, just like most parents do. It's a big responsibility, but to know that she did this for us 10 times over, and the level of the high expectations that she had for us, that's really what got me, not just through my education, through my school years, but really propelled me to where I am today. I cannot describe, just a quick example, but I remember us having to, write in Germany. There's a lot of writing going on, a lot of spelling, a lot of essay writing. And we used to spend hours and hours and hours writing the same essay over and over again until there were no more spelling errors, until it read well, until it was well composed. And I hated it at the time. But now looking back, she did this with 10 children. Just the amount of time she spent and invested in us on a daily basis for homework, for the little things. I'm in awe of that. And that's really my, the gratitude that I have for her. She prepared me for everything, and not just her, but the village at large prepared me for everything that I now know I needed for life, and that I just took for granted, to be honest with you. That's how normal it was. I took her for granted the way most children take their own parents for granted. There was no way for me to tell or differentiate between how I grew up and how I am currently raising my own children. Yeah.
Actually, just to add to that, I was going to say, like, just the experience at SOS in terms of preparing you to for a better life when you're an adult. I think for me it was a very similar experience, because as like Irene said, when I look back and say, at my family home we're 16 kids, so one mother raising 16 kids, and the amount of discipline that was instilled in us in terms of hard work. Everybody had to do their share at home. And there was a lot of structure. So that for me, like later on in life, really helped me in terms of how there's nothing good comes free, or nothing good comes easy. So the amount of structure that kind of was set up at SOS, the amount of work support that they give you in terms of to be able to excel in school. So like the parents or the mother is the center of everything that happens in that home, and they put in a lot of effort. They make sure that every child gets the required attention. And when you have 16 kids, it's usually hard to balance, but they do an extraordinary job of making sure that every child feels special and grow up to be a very productive citizen.
Yeah, firstly, for my travels, every SOS mother I've met at the villages that I've visited, I have just been in awe of, and they are truly the SOS parents that we have around the world are the backbone of this organization, and the dedication that they give to children day in and day out, every single day, and creating that environment of support and trust and love is unlike anything I've ever seen. So it's
Hey,
really
Laura, real quick, and I wonder if Gebre and Irene had the same, because it isn't just moms. You know, moms, it is their job per se, so they actually have vacation time. And when they do go on vacation, we have essentially what's called aunts that would come, you know, and you know, to substitute the moms if they had personal business somewhere out of town or whatnot, right? So it isn't just the moms, you know, there is also aunts, and there may have been uncles, I don't know, in other villages, but for us, there was, you know, essentially it was a substitute teacher that would come stay at the house for 2 days or a week or whatnot. And so again, it takes a village. When mom's not there, there was somebody else that would jump in, you know, and that knew you very well.
Yeah. And actually, one of the questions that came in while you guys were talking is about moms, but there are dads as well. So it just depends on the villages and who you're raised by. Some have moms, some have dads, some have parents. It's really, it really just depends on the location and who is interested in doing the work. But we encourage, anybody who wants to be a part of this to be. So
I think
great.
it has changed now. I noticed that in Austria that there is some married couples now that are actually taking over. You know, not sure how that is in Africa. I didn't see that when I saw villages in Cambodia, Vietnam, or other places. But in Austria now, you see couples, you see men. It's a little bit obviously it's evolving, like anything.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And here in the U.S. as well, in Florida, I know we have some parents and some SOS dads and SOS moms. So it's really a mix now, just like depending on the location and who's really interested in devoting their time and energy and real life to children. So yeah. So moving on, I want to keep us going. We got a lot of good questions. So the next question is from Emily, and I think you guys have already kind of touched on this a little about your experience, but do you still keep in touch with your SOS mom or parents or other kids who grew up at the village? And do you ever go back? Gebre, I know you already said you do, but do you ever go back to the village or even take your families back to the village to visit where you grew up? So Irene, do you want to start off there?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I think that's, again, a testament to SOS, but I do keep in touch with all of my SOS siblings. You know, depending on the family or kind of the family constellation, you may end up having from anywhere from 8 to 20, 30 different SOS siblings over time in the same household. For me, it was 10, which is on the low end, you know, for an SOS family. We weren't all in the household at the same time, but throughout the years, you know, some of us as younger ones came in, other, you know, older ones aged out. But the total of 10, one of which is my biological sister who lives here in Atlanta with me. But yes, we visit SOS often. Before COVID, I try to, you know, visit maybe once every year or every other year. But my SOS mom actually comes here almost, you know, she used to come maybe twice a year. Now she's getting a little bit older. She's almost 80, so she comes once a year, health permitting, but she brings other SOS moms with her. And so that's, those are like the extended family that Klaus keeps mentioning, the village at large. You know, I won't say they all keep track of us, but through my mom, they do keep track of us. So I have hosted here SOS Moms in Atlanta. We've traveled the US together. My children actually, during their early years, they used to go to Germany by themselves, you know, so I would put them on a plane as unaccompanied minors, and they would spend the summer at SOS with my mom. And then the other thing is too, when I was between high school and college, I actually had my first son right after high school. So my son spent a lot of time at SOS during the day while I was attending university, while I was building a business, while I was, you know, otherwise occupied. My SOS family actually stepped in and took care of my son, you know, when he was very young, and I had to, you know, try to make something of me, of myself. So my SOS mom kept him. He would go to an SOS kindergarten, and then when we moved to the US, they had such a close bond with the SOS grandmother. They spent a lot of summers there. Almost every summer, all of my children went back and just, you know, spent time, built their own relationships there.
Gebre or Klaus, anything to add there?
You know, I think because there was a time where it wasn't as, we weren't as connected, I would say in the 90s, but now with Facebook and WhatsApp and all those, it's super easy to be in touch with them. So when I go back to Austria before COVID once a year at least, and I would just send out an email and say, hey, I'm in Vienna, I'm here, who's around? There's always 10, 15, 20 people. We meet up somewhere, have some wine or chit chat. What was sort of moving was in April when my mom, my SOS mom, I mean, she was old, but COVID hit. One of our children went to the hospital and we all FaceTimed in, you know, so that was sort of, we had a Zoom call amongst all each other. It was probably 15 or 17, I don't know, out of the 32 were able to be on the Zoom call. So it was good to catch up. So yes, we are in touch. You know, they are sisters, they are brothers. Some we're closer than others, obviously, it's just a typical, but it isn't just the ones in your house, it's the one outside also that are in other houses. Our village had 15 houses, you know, so there's lots of friends, you know, and some of my best friends actually came from other homes that we're still friends today, and I follow them and their kids and etc. So no, it's not a one and done thing. SOS, it's for life, and we cherish it for life. We cherish those relationships for life.
Great.
Yeah, so I would say,
Oh, go ahead,
I was just
Gebre.
gonna say, I would say the same experience that I've had. I go back at least every 2 years, and I make sure I go visit the village. I keep in touch with all my siblings from SOS. I'm very close with my mom because she raised me since I was 5 months. So I probably talk to her at least once a week. And she's been in any of my milestones, graduating from college, when I was getting married, when I had my first son, she came over. So we keep in touch. It's as Klaus said, it's basically a family for life. So we keep in touch, and then we are in close contact with all the kids that we grew up with.
Great. Irene, I did have the pleasure of meeting your mom a few years ago at one of our fundraising events in Atlanta. She was there for that, so that was wonderful. So kind of on a similar note, this one was from Robert. He wanted to know, like, either while you were at the village or maybe now, however you kind of want to answer that, were you able to really have any ongoing relationships with either biological relatives, siblings, birth parents? I know, Irene, you already mentioned your sister was at the village with you, your biological sister, but just in terms of any other ongoing relationships you had with anyone.
Can I take that, Laura?
Yeah, go for it.
So because I think it's actually a good example of how SOS works. I got in when I was 5. My mom was just she was found not capable of raising myself, and at that point I haven't met my dad. And SOS, she had visitation rights, so she would visit every 3 months for a day. And unless there was some issues where they said it would be better off if I wasn't seeing my mom. I then got to meet my dad when I was 16. Actually, introduction was made with SOS and social services, and have 2 sisters. And that relationship actually has grown enormously, where now when I go to Austria, that is actually I would say is my real family. I go see my dad now and my sisters and their families, as well as I go to SOS. So I sort of have these 2 families, and it's great to have 2. We all have one that we're born into, and sometimes we like that or we don't. We had another one, and out of that family we got to choose, and I'm best friends with my sisters. Love my dad and his wife, my stepmom. My real mom passed away years ago. So yeah, so there is external contact. Depending on everybody's circumstances. I was considered, we call it a social orphan. I wasn't an orphan per se. I didn't lose my parents. It was just a social service call where they removed me from an unhealthy environment, and founded SOS in the case was the best situation for me. So yeah, so I have great relationships with my dad, my stepmom, and my sisters. And it's not for everybody. You know, some do, some don't. So I'm not sure about Irene's experience. Thanks for asking, Laura.
I'll jump in since you called my name here, but yes, my biological sister and I grew up together in the same SOS family, which is, I think, a very important kind of element of SOS, is that biological siblings do not typically get separated. So that was the case for us as well. My story is a little bit different from most. It's not really the norm. I was born in Senegal, West Africa, but then ended up in an SOS village in Germany, which is not the norm, I believe. But my biological mom was half German, and so her family, extended family, was in Germany. So there was a reason as to why SOS Germany took us in. But there were visitation rights as well with my mother. She lived in Greece while I was growing up, so she would come and visit. And interestingly enough, as we were growing up, my SOS mom actually formed a friendship with my biological mom, to the point where she would sometimes visit her on the island. She lived in Crete, so southern Greece, and took some of her SOS friends with her, other moms, when they would vacation there. But we would spend a lot of time there. So it was actually a remarkable experience for me to see the bond between two mothers who loved me equally. I knew that for a fact, but who kind of traded off depending on what was needed. My primary care was at SOS, but as we were growing up, as we got older, we spent more and more time in Greece as well, in Athens. My sister went to the German international school in Athens and finished her high school there, actually. So there was an interesting trade-off between the two women, and that was a profound experience for me as well, to know that I was loved equally, and that they had made a pact between the two of them to give us whatever care was the best suited at the time. So that was my experience.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, mine's slightly different. I mean, obviously, I didn't get a chance to meet my biological parents, but I have 4 brothers. One brother grew up with me at SOS in the same family home. The other 2 siblings were older, so they basically didn't, since there was so much demand for SOS, they were only accepting children that were less than 6 years old then. So they went to a different orphanage, and they ended up, you know, going back to our extended family. So growing up, I did not have I didn't get to see them a lot, but I think once I got to college and I was an adult, I was able to go through my SOS file. SOS does a really good job of keeping, you know, each child's file very well. So you could go back and basically trace your family, where your family lives. So I was able to go back and meet my family. You know, until now I keep in touch with them. I go and see them whenever I'm in Ethiopia. So, you know, SOS does give you the opportunity to, if you want to keep in touch with your real extended family.
Great. Thank you guys for sharing that. So next question we have is from Risa, and she is an SOS sponsor, and she was wondering if you guys were aware of any of your sponsors while you were living at the village. Have you met any of your sponsors, or did they ever visit you while you were at the village, and what kind of impact having those sponsors had on you, if any? So, Klaus, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I had 2 sponsors. One was from Norway, one was from Holland. The Dutch guys came to visit me. I visited them several times, and we stayed in touch our entire lives without my Dutch people. Again, he passed away with COVID this year, and I got a note from his extended family, and just a heads up. So they knew we were still in touch all this time. And the other one was Norwegian, and I visited them as well. And they were in touch with me until I sort of aged out, and then we lost contact. So it's sort of a mix, but it's different for every. I had 2 sponsors. Some of my other siblings had 9, some had 1. So it just depended where would how, and some had 0 contact. But in my case, you know, it worked out great. My Dutch, he spoke fluent English, Greek, so we were able to communicate sometimes in English or German. So I learned a lot from him. And you know, I miss him now, having that conversation and that dialogue. You know, But again, it was great to have that. So, and it's up to the sponsor to be as involved or as little involved or as much involved. Because I was a sponsor myself for some kids, and some never wrote. Some we got some for Christmas, you know. So it depends on each individual.
Mm-hmm. Gebre, I think, do you want to add anything else to that?
Yes, so I had two sponsors from Norway. I didn't get a chance to see them in person, but what we used to do was around holidays or around birthdays, we send them an update, basically, you know, what I'm doing, how I'm doing, you know, send them a picture, and they kind of would do the same thing. So that's how we kind of kept in touch with our sponsors. And then I'll say a few kids at the village did get a chance where their sponsors would come and visit them. So as Klaus said, I think it depends on the sponsor, how involved they want to be in terms of, you know, if they have an opportunity to go and see the children. I mean, the children would be, you know, I would have been more than happy to see my sponsor. So I think it just depends on the sponsor, but we do keep in touch and give them an update regularly.
Great.
Yeah, I think the situation for us was a little bit different in Germany, and I can't really tell. I don't know for sure if it was a different approach, you know, by SOS Germany versus other countries, but there was a lot of emphasis on, quote unquote, giving us a normal upbringing. So all of us obviously knew we were at SOS. We knew our circumstances were very much like informed and plugged into the how we got there and why, but there was not was no interaction that I can remember of any sponsors. So there was, I don't know if it was done in an effort to not make us feel as though we weren't normal children or didn't have, you know, didn't feel like victims. I don't know really the logic behind it, but I can't remember a single, you know, true just one-on-one interaction with a sponsor. I don't know who sponsored me, if anybody did. I was a beneficiary, I'm sure, of a lot of people's, you know, outpouring of support. So.
Hey, Laura, you know what? If there's sponsors on the call, this was the 70s and 80s, but one of the favorite moments always when your sponsors for your birthday or Christmas package would show up, right? And now it's like Dutch chocolate or Norwegian salmon or whatever it was. And, you know, back then we didn't know what other people in other countries do or eat, right? The highlight was always to have some candy or some shirt that said things that you didn't even know what it was, but it was different than German, right? Certainly, the sponsors had, you know, were a shining light for us when randomly things would show up and would share with all our siblings, etc. So there's sponsors on the call. Feel free to send something to the kids; they'll love it. You know, some soccer uniforms that you sent to somebody in Cambodia, they will wear it night and day, 24/7. Right, Gabra?
Yeah, that's
yeah. I've always said, if you want to be the most popular person at an SOS village, just show up with a soccer ball and some, you know, anything soccer related. I mean, it's just like, you know, Christmas Day every time, because soccer is just life at so many of our villages. So my favorite, actually, I have a quick story. My favorite story was when I was in SOS Haiti, and there was a soccer game going on between the SOS village and an outside team. And the coach, it was halftime, and, you know, in AAA, the coach brings in the team to give them the pep talk. And so for this time, not only did the coach bring in the team, but the whole village runs in to listen to the pep talk at the halftime. And then, you know, they blow the whistle. The kids who aren't on the team go back to the sidelines, and the kids who are on the team go back to the village. So it was an amazing thing to see. Yeah.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So this question is from Jennifer, and you know, I think we've touched on this a lot throughout, but I think anything you guys want to add here, but how did your experience at the village and really with SOS kind of help shape who you are today, personally, professionally, as a parent, you know, who you are today, and what kind of impact do you think SOS had on that? Irene, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, and a question that becomes more and more, you know, important to me. Again, I talked about this earlier. The older I get, the more appreciation I have. But the kind of preparation that SOS gave me, it's very difficult to put into words. And I think it kind of ties into questions around sponsorship and why people should get involved into SOS. I know we're running against the clock here a little bit, but maybe I can combine both. But the preparation and the kind of love that poured into me as an SOS child, I have a hard time expressing in words. And the way it prepared me for life is, you know, 1,000 ways, 1,000,000 ways over. There's not probably a day that goes by where I don't think about the benefits that I had and the advantage I had in growing up as an SOS child versus, you know, some of the alternatives that are out there. And I think the biggest accomplishment of this organization that I can identify is that the basic needs of children are cared for in such a way by SOS that you can actually focus on being just a human. You know, the education, the you know, housing, the homes, you know, everything that you need as a child to flourish is taken care of to the extent that you don't have to worry about basic things. You know, when I compare to other models and foster care in general, I think as an adult you spend so much time catching up on the deficits that you experience in other settings that I could have experienced, that it's hard to ever get to the living and being human part because you have so much to make up. With SOS, I think it's the opposite. It's not just taking care of basic needs, it's pouring love into a child to the point where we have surplus. I think the higher order from love is compassion, right? If you are able, you love to the point where the surplus love kind of spills out of you now as a compassionate human being, and you're able to raise your own children with love and compassion, something that you're unable to do if you don't have this foundation taken care of. So it's just human nature. If your foundation is firm and taken care of the way that SOS took care of us, everything else becomes possible. My future, you know, would have not been what it is now had it not been for SOS. And one of the most profound things that I can identify is that I spent so much time as a child, SOS child, volunteering or raising money for underprivileged children, not ever thinking about the fact that I was technically an underprivileged child. And when I think about that, that is such a profound experience. I didn't spend a minute thinking I was an underprivileged child. So I spent, you know, I did bake sales, I did volunteer work because I wanted to help these poor children around the world, not ever realizing that somebody else might look at me as one of those poor children. And that is the legacy of SOS. I never was made to feel any other way than love, taken care of, highly capable, you know, capable of anything. And so I never even considered the possibility that I wouldn't do everything that I'm doing now. That was kind of a given. And so the surplus of love, raising underprivileged children into compassionate adults, I only hope on a day-to-day basis that I can do that for my children, to raise compassionate adults. That's kind of the ultimate goal for me. SOS did this consistently with me, my siblings, and as I'm speaking with alumni around the world, consistently around the world. So that's the SOS kind of stamp of quality and approval that I can give as an adult now. That's a remarkable investment into humanity, really.
Thanks, Irene.
Yeah, my take on it.
Gebre?
I mean, Irene said it perfectly, and if I were to add a couple things, was you know, for a lot of us, you know, SOS or not SOS, our lives would have shaped completely different. You know, I'm convinced I'd end up in jail or somewhere, you know, because the line using your gift for good or bad is very thin line at times. But when we look back, that all of us we're at the mercy of people that give their lives, their money, their efforts, their time to kids like us. That, you know, and we don't really understand that until you're older, because growing up in SOS, it's about taking. You know, you have no way of giving back other than maybe to your other kids, your sisters and siblings. But once you grow out, the one thing, there's a lot of things I'm taking with, but one of them was now we're in a situation to give. It is, we finally can pay it back, not to the people that gave to us, but we can pay it back to the people that are now in SOS racing. And I never forget, there was, we always would get visitors from somewhere, and somebody handed me a $5 bill one day. It says, here, just buy yourself some candy, and I go, well, I don't deserve that. I didn't do anything for you. And that person said, pay it forward. There will be times in your life where somebody else will want to need, $5 for something that you don't, just for something, it doesn't matter what it is. It still sticks with me today, where whenever we do good and in your daily lives, where someone says, well, I can't repay, or I don't know who you are. I said, it's okay, just pay it forward. Pay, and that's what my wife and I are doing now. We're paying things forward. We learned, I was at the mercy of a lot of people, and now it's time to give back. That's what we're doing. I love doing it. I love seeing children play. Being in Cambodia was a wake-up call for me, and say, oh my God, this is exactly how my childhood was, and I want to make sure, hundreds of thousands of kids to come will have the same experience.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Klaus and Irene have said it really well. I don't know if I have much to add. What I would say for me is, I always ask the question: if I didn't go to SOS, where would I be now? I think that's a very good question to understand the impact of SOS has on children. And we are just 3 examples. There are thousands of kids who've gone through the SOS system who've become very successful. And for me, I mean, I'm a true product of SOS. I mean, everything that I have right now is because of SOS. Had I not joined the SOS family, at best, I would be a farmer, not even knowing if I'm gonna, survive day to day. At worst, I probably wouldn't have survived. So, and SOS has transformed my life to be a successful one. I mean, not just be able to be a responsible citizen, but to be in a position to try to help, be in a position to, help myself and help my community, help my society. And the impact that we have, and as they said, is basically, it puts you in a position to pay it forward. And for me, I mean, like I said, everything that I have, it's like, I'm a true definition of SOS. If you want to evaluate a company, if you want to look at a product and say, is this a good product? Just look at the product. And as I said, I joined SOS when I had barely nothing, and I've turned out to be a somewhat good product. So I think that is basically a testament to what SOS has done. And like all the support that people, and what is really extraordinary about SOS is that the fact that half the kids people don't even know. Like, all my sponsors were from Norway, never seen me, obviously they've seen my pictures, but never really knew me personally, but had the compassion, as Irene said, to say, I want to help somebody. I want to be better than myself. And the impact of being a sponsor is actually huge. I mean, you are transforming somebody's life in extraordinary ways. And not only are you transforming that person's life, you're transforming the life of a family, a society, even a country. So, and I'm sure we have a lot of sponsors on this call. I want to emphasize that the amount of work and generosity goes a long way in changing lives across the globe.
Yeah, I want to tag on to that real quick. I know we're a minute over and we're about to cut out, but this is really the direct message to the sponsors and anybody who even takes a minute out of their day or any funds out of their life to help impact children. And I can't thank you enough. For me, it's a very, it's kind of a full loop, full circle moment. Now that I'm in this position, I'm able to serve on the SOS board, I'm able to raise funds, but it's between the sponsors and the SOS parents. And obviously there's a big network around that, but the multiplier effect is really what we want to focus on. I think, Gabriel, you're a great product, if you want to call yourself that. But I think even beyond that, it's the multiplier effect. You impact generations through giving, and that I can't think of a better way to really have, put your stamp on humanity and really pay it forward, like Klaus said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys said it best, and I think, you know, we say we're the world's largest family, and that includes alumni and, you know, staff and moms and the donors and the sponsors. We can't do it without every single piece of those, and we're proud to be this large family, and you guys have showed throughout it how you can always lean back on this family and support it, and are proof of this model of care. And so we couldn't do it without, you know, you guys and the people on the call and the moms and every person along the way. So I wish we had more time. We have more questions, but maybe we'll just have to have a round 2 at some point. So thank you, Irene and Klaus and Gebre, so much for joining us today, sharing your story. It was wonderful to hear from all of you. Thank you to everybody on the call for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you guys next time.